Welcome back to Revelatorium with me, Katha, the podcast that comes around once a month, just about as often as I will have a little medical outing. What is a medical outing? Well, when you have as many diagnoses as I do, you tend to see a good number of specialists every single month. Like, I feel like a lot of people, if you don't have any chronic illnesses, like you just go to the doctor once a year for your annual physical, if that. Like, I have multiple friends who just like don't go. They don't do that. And so they just don't see doctors for like years on end. But I'm like, I'm seeing doctors and specialists and therapists like multiple times every single month. It's not to the point where I'm being hospitalized. Like, none of my chronic illnesses are to that severity, but they're moderate and they require me to go in for treatments. And it just so happens that, like, for some reason, everywhere I've lived in Seattle, there has been a donut shop very close to my doctor. And so when I go in, I will take myself out for a little old-fashioned glazed or white with sprinkles or donut holes, or if it's befitting, a crumb donut perhaps, maybe even a Boston cream, maybe a twist. I love sweets. I'm addicted to sugar. We'll talk about that later in the episode. Okay. But it just kind of like happened upon me. I didn't do this when I lived in California. I wasn't like really making my doctor's office visits an occasion, but I feel like it can feel like a burden to spend that money on your healthcare and to like make the commute to see a doctor. It's like there are many other ways I'd probably prefer to spend my time. But in this case, I'm like, if the donut shops are going to position themselves so close to these medical establishments, I might as well lean into that reward. And so I got into that habit. I'm going to fold a lot of Katha-isms into this next thing I'm going to say, but I've enjoyed coupling, temptation bundling, if you will, my doctor's visits with artist dates and leaning into my intuition. Temptation bundling was a term I was obsessed with back when I was making like productivity study, like college advice content. And it's like you take something not super pleasurable and you mix it with something pleasurable. So if you hate doing the dishes, do it while watching your favorite podcast or your favorite TV show. Like, basically save that TV show for that displeasurable activity so you can mix the dopamine with the pain and you get a nice balance, basically. So I'm like, take the doctor's appointment, which I don't really mind doctor's appointments, honestly. It's just kind of like, it is just sort of like a sterile environment. So it's nice to take that and then do something very whimsical, intuitive. Like today, I was just really feeling like discovering a new cafe. And this doctor's visit was in a new part of town. So I went to a little cafe, did some reading, journaling. Then I basically just followed my intuition and decided to walk home instead of taking the bus. And I didn't follow Google Maps. I just walked in the general direction, which I enjoy doing. Like, I kind of knew where I was going, but I also just sort of like wandered down some alleyways, like wandered up a street, took a little different of a path. And I ended up stumbling upon this beautiful park that I'd been to before, but hadn't seen all of it. And it had this wonderful mosaic bench. I just sat there and I looked up and I watched all the leaves fall very slowly. And I looked across Lake Union and I could see the Olympic Mountains. And I was like, I am just so glad I took this moment to not just like hustle and rush over to a doctor's appointment because it was very early this morning and then just like hustle back, but to actually build this into a little experience, a little outing. So I'm looking forward to doing that like once a month. And it makes me look forward to doctor's appointments, which I feel like is good to trick yourself into if you're someone that does not like doctor's appointments. I did want to disclaim that I'm going to wear my PJs for this episode, and I hope that's okay with you, but it doesn't really matter because it's okay with me, and I'm the only one here at the time of recording, to my knowledge. Could there be somebody listening in behind my wall? My neighbors, perhaps? Could be. But I never hear them, so I'm assuming they never hear me. But yeah, I whenever I've been really enjoying lately, whenever I do something eepy or like cozy or just anything in like a tired way, I'm going peepaw mode. I'm going meemaw mode. Like, I love calling things peepaw and meemaw lately. Like, if you're kind of nodding off on the bus, that's peepaw, you know? And I was in New York and I was telling this to my friend Jared, and I was like, I probably should get like a non-binary version of Peepaw and Meemaw. And at the same second, we both go, Ziza. So new terminology, use it with your friends. You're not lazy. You're just Ziza. You're just Meemawing. You know, it's like, I'm Meemaw. There's nothing wrong with Meemaw. Okay. Detract from the pejorative use of lazy by replacing it with Meemaw and Peepaw. Okay. Other thing up top, I have some groundbreaking developments that have come out of me spewing my ramblings on these podcasts every month. And that is that episode 10 revealed that we have a Paul Mescal informant among us. Okay? Sometimes it's hard to know when you're listening to a podcast who else is there. I jokingly have referred to having like a Revelatorium conference. I think that would be so fun. I think it would be lovely. We could all get together under one of those big kindergarten striped like tarp balloon things that you pull over and then you sit down. Could be cute. And when I was in Alaska, I stumbled upon these hot springs in which there was an activatorium on the campus. And I'm like, what more fitting for a Revelatorium conference than for the scene of it to be the activatorium? So it would be cool to gather us all together so there's not so much anonymity, but one person's anonymity was stricken because on episode 10, I was talking about Paul Mescal, the new movies he's going to be in, All of Us Strangers and Foe, which I did see both of in October in this last month, of which we will be discussing on this podcast. And I was talking about he has really good facial expressions and looks. And then I dovetailed into a Nicki Minaj lyric. I will let you make the inference on that one if you are a Barb. And then I was like wondering, it would be just so, give me so much closure or a sense of satisfaction if Paul Mescal did listen to Nicki Minaj. And then I got a DM no less than 2 weeks later from a listener, a Revelatorium listener in the UK who's Irish and lives in London. And she runs in the same circles, asked him, and he said, yes, he does, which I'm taking to mean that maybe she mentioned she heard this thing on a podcast, which means he has some semblance of awareness that my podcast exists, and that's enough for me. I don't want to meet my heroes. I don't necessarily need to do the Phoebe Bridgers Instagram live interview with him where we meet and then fall in love and then get engaged and then break up. I don't really need to run that through. I think he's probably scarred from it. And honestly, I've had my moments too. But it was just so marvelous to get the full circle experience on that. And she did follow up on which songs actually he listens to. And he said like Super Bass and Roman's Revenge, which honestly, shallow cut, but we'll take it. So I revealed that update on my Instagram story. So if you're not following me over there, like that's where you're getting the live updates at Catherine on Instagram. So yeah, in terms of his latest projects, I did see Foe, okay, which is like a sci-fi movie with Saoirse Ronan. And I did see All of Us Strangers, which is like a surreal romance drama with Paul Mescal and fellow Irishman Andrew Scott. And that film I got to see because of another podcast listener. This is why it's so beneficial to put yourself out there. I'm not advocating for everyone having a podcast necessarily, but if you want to, do it. But just putting yourself out there in whatever way, online or off, because by virtue of me talking about All of Us Strangers, a listener DM'd me, wrote in, said, oh, there's a screening at the Seattle Queer Film Festival. And I said, let me pull up, I'll be there. Tickets were like $35, not cheap, but like if I'm supporting queer film, I will pay it, you know, have to be on my ally shit. So everyone's talking about ally ship, but why isn't everyone talking about ally shit? That would be the name of my first debut rap track, I do believe. So I went and was surrounded by gay men. And I don't know why I was surprised by that. I don't know why I thought there would be more women in the audience. Because it's a movie about two queer men. So I'm like, I guess that appeals to queer men, but it appeals to me very much. So many of my favorite films are two queer people. So I'm like, where are the rest of the women and NBs in here? They were probably in there, but just not in my section at least. I just found it funny because I'm like, usually the films I see, I'm not surrounded by men because I'm seeing movies that really appeal to women, you know, like, you know, I don't know. I'm not going to, like Bottoms, you know, like that kind of thing. Barbie. Those are some of the most recent movies I saw in theaters. And there were not a lot of male laughs in the audience. I won't say there were a lot of male laughs in the audience for All of Us Strangers either, because that movie was emotionally devastating. It ravished me to my core of like all joy. It was so dark, but so profound and wonderful and surreal. And it didn't hurt my feelings the way I thought it was going to hurt my feelings. Like I thought I was going to be upset from the actual partnership that they shared. No. It's something completely different. So when it's out in December, go see it. I saw Foe in a very different experience. Not a single man in the audience because we were the only people there. It was opening night of Foe on a Friday at 7:00. That's like prime time movie watching time. We were the only two people in that theater. It was so fun. I literally ran around in the front of the theater, almost did a cartwheel. We kicked our legs up. We brought our own snacks. We could talk through the whole movie. I'm a movie talker. Who's surprised? Literally anybody with a podcast, I'm just going to go ahead and assume they're a movie talker. If you need an hour uninterrupted or with a guest to speak, you're probably outspoken enough that you cannot shut the fuck up during a whole movie. I've also really enjoyed taking friends through not the Nathan For You, but the How To with John Wilson experience. That to me is a word of mouth TV show. Some TV shows you hear about because of Twitter a lot of times, or Instagram or TikTok. How To with John Wilson, that's a word of mouth TV show. Like my friend Cam, my friend Amanda, both introduced me and sat me down and had me watch an episode with them. And it's a very social show. This is like a hybrid revelation and taking moment for this past month, because I realized that like there's some shows that I do not enjoy watching alone. Like any reality TV show, like the show Alone. Okay, bringing that back, call back. I like the show Alone. And any type of reality, like I don't watch dating shows because I don't have people to watch it with. But when I was getting my hair cut, into this little Meg Ryan long bob moment, I think this length suits me. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with finding the right hair that suits me. But I think lighter color and lighter length, you know, I like to make light of it with my hair. Anyway, while I was in the salon, they always have reality TV shows on, and there was Love is Blind was on, and I literally never watched that show. It's fun when you have people to make commentary with. Like there are some shows, like there's so many commentary YouTube channels that just watch like Jubilee and The Cut and those dating shows, because it's like, yeah, those shows are meant to provoke you. There are some shows to me that serve as prompts. Like I send out prompts to you every single month to respond to. Sometimes TV shows can be prompts. I think board games are also prompts. This was something I heard on Exploration Live, which I've recommended to a few of you, and you've taken me up on the recommendation and written back to me about how much it's changed your life in the context of your language and your imagination, which is so good because Charlie and Natalie, I can never get enough of. I literally pinned their podcast on my Spotify podcast page, which if you're there, give me a review. That would be excellent. Anyway, they talk about how board games are for like the portion of the group hang or the group trip where you've run out of conversation. And some of you may be like, we never run out of conversation when I hang out with my friends. Well, it depends how often you're seeing these people. If these are people that are in your life weekly, and it's not like a trip where you're visiting a long distance friend and you have a lot to catch up on, you might not have that much ground you have not excavated. And therefore you need a prompt. You need a fun little question. You need something that's going to let's just, spawn conversation. Board games are that for me. Typically, I don't need board games. I don't need All of Us Strangers. I will just ask you inane questions. Like one of the questions I came up with last month was, what time of day and the week are you? because I was talking to my friend Sean. He was going to make me a playlist, and he was like, what do you want the theme of the playlist to be? And I said, Sunday morning, because you're a Sunday morning. Which is sweet. And then I was like, actually, you are kind of a Sunday morning. Like, that's your vibe to me. Like, I can picture you at your best and sort of at your most like on point, like having a good wind up slow Sunday morning. And then I went around the table and I was like, guys, what day and time of the week are you? And I thought that would be too maybe esoteric or too abstract for people to dig into. No, every single person at that table had a response. Every person. And the best thing is to bounce it off each other and say, oh, I think you're this. What do you think? And then kind of go back and forth. That generated probably 35 minutes of dinner table conversation. I am productive, okay? I produce. I was in the conversation factory, okay? I was grinding the gears. I was wrapping the sentences together. And I felt like I really, made a mark on that evening. So let's reframe what productivity means. Sometimes having a good conversation can feel so productive, actually. Like when I'm having a very stimulating conversation with somebody, that is when I feel like life is being lived in the most effective way, honestly. So TV shows alongside board games can be those for you, okay? And so because I was introduced word of mouth to How To with John Wilson, I then distributed it via word of mouth. I believe in reciprocity, and I believe in consensual distribution. So if someone sends something to you personally, maybe you don't want to blast that publicly. Maybe that's just meant to be a one-on-one thing. So How To with John Wilson, very, very philosophically, like not challenging, but philosophically resonant, but also sort of disturbing and unsettling. But it's so like avant-garde and creative and just so inspiring actually to watch. So I've enjoyed introducing that to people because you cannot just watch that show and not say anything. I don't think it's possible. And I do have friends that do not like to speak during TV shows. I will ask people, okay, and I will respect their boundaries, and I'll try to shut the fuck up and store the notes in my head so that after the TV show is done, we can decompress after. But like How To with John Wilson, that's a pause and discuss every few minutes, or at least just little interjections during it. Same thing for reality TV shows. Same thing for a lot of YouTube videos. There's a lot of YouTube videos like I've really enjoyed having boob tube time with my friends, which is where I visit a friend long distance or they visit me, and then, we sleep over for multiple days and we just sit on it doesn't have to be with a long distance friend. It just seems that a lot of my internet friends and people that like have the same like reverence for YouTube I do, or are as engaged and sort of like into it as I am, are met via the internet and therefore long distance. It's not often that I meet someone via the internet and they happen to live in Seattle, So anyway, sit on your couch and you just watch lifestyle girly vlogs and you just pause it and you just rip on it. And you're just like, here's what I think. Here's what I think. This made me think of that. This made me think of that. So good. So good. Like, because I guess maybe the people that don't like to talk during TV shows, they think it's distracting from the TV show. I think the TV show is distracting from you. Okay? Like, I think that like the world revolves around you. Art is important. Media is important. But it's like, to me, everything I put out there, I want to have a cultural impact or an influence of some sort, or at least impact me, like feel like I'm furthering me. Like it overjoys me when I hear you guys like, and we'll see some from the responses you sent in this month on my prompts of like how you've sort of, maybe changed the landscape of one of your friendships, or, applied one of my little theories or frameworks to your life and it really helped. Like all of that is really meaningful to me. Even just when I meet people in Seattle and they showed up to this like really cool community event because I spoke about it, that's wonderful to me. I'm like, I don't want to feel like I'm just existing in a vacuum. I don't want art and media to exist in a vacuum. I'm like, it should be in conversation. Like to me, it's like one of my biggest markers of success, like truly and honestly, I'm not even being facetious. I came up with this theory called pee-pee girls versus piss girls with co-authored with my friend Sheridan. And I posted that on TikTok. You can follow me on TikTok, Cather Out. Tell me why I have more followers on TikTok than YouTube. Doesn't make sense. I met up with a TikTok friend in New York and he didn't even know I had a YouTube channel. And I was like, this is so bizarre. Like YouTube has been sort of like the forefront of sort of like my consciousness. Like whenever people meet me, they always associate me with YouTube, but now I'm being associated with a different platform. It's like, how does it even feel to be like, I'm sure a lot of you probably aren't associated with a platform. You know, people aren't like, oh, you're this kind of person, but maybe they associate with like an art and craft, whatever. Anyway, we're like taking up residence in Tangent City today. We are. Anyway, I met up with TikTok Mutual. He knew me from TikTok. We're getting back to the point. And I made a TikTok about pee-pee girls and piss girls, and it took off. And I would feel so vindicated if I were just like sitting at a cafe one day doing my work with my AirPods in, but no music playing and the transparent mode on so I can eavesdrop without people thinking I'm listening. Yeah, I'm going to out myself as an eavesdropper. I think it's perfectly moral. Okay? If you're having a conversation in public, you should be prepared for people to listen to it. I am. I'll divulge some shit in public. And sometimes it's actually a little bit of like a turn on if people are listening, because I'm like, yeah, free entertainment, baby. You know, if my conversation's that engrossing, if I'm a good enough storyteller, people are going to want to eavesdrop. And that's a mark of success. Anyway, the actual mark of success would be if I were eavesdropping and they mentioned like pee-pee girls and piss girls, or like any one of my little like close friends conferences, any little terms I've like coined and they were talking about it, I would feel like, wow, something I introduced is helping to break the ice between these two people and helping them to understand themselves more and the way that they live in the world. And that's why I like the what time and day of the week are you? Because it tells you two things. It tells you, first of all, how someone sees themselves, and also how someone sees the day of the week. Because not everyone has the same conception of a Tuesday, of a Friday. And this was influenced from Exploration Live, because actually the second reference to Exploration Live, I will always give credit where it's due. I will. So on their episode, they were talking about how Saturday has bad branding. Like we know what Sunday's for, we know what Monday's for, we know what Friday's for, but Saturday, it's like, what is that day for? It's kind of limitless, boundaryless. Maybe that is the brand of Saturday. But that's why I enjoy asking people what time and day of the week are them. Because it's like, what does Tuesday night mean to you? What does a Thursday morning mean to you? Okay. And you might be thinking nothing. Well, unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to participate in the conversation. Okay. But I like to, come up with some little conversation starters, whether that be, and when you don't have those, sometimes you can use it. You don't have to always create them yourself. You can borrow someone else's creativity via a TV show and then use that to bounce off of. Let me close out the thought by saying, if using How To with John Wilson or What Time and Day of the Week Are You or a board game as a prompt for further conversation is important for like the latter half of a trip or the latter half of a hang when you need, more conversation to generate, there needs to be a way to bottle and store the magic of the energy when you first reunite with someone after not seeing them for a long time. And I'm talking about your people, right? Like your people. When you see your people and it's been even a month, that first 2 hours is just da, 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 da. You're just going back and forth. It's electric. Twice when I was in New York. Well, I mean, there was obviously multiple times in New York where I had this experience, but with closer friends, it's so nice to just get together in those first 2 hours. Oh, it's on a different level. It's on a different frequency. And sometimes I get sad because I want the whole hang to have the force of those first 2 hours, but it's not possible. And so that's why you use the conversational supplements, okay? Because, we're not nutritionally, your conversation can't sustain you that long, right? So you need supplements. Okay? Does that make sense? But I want to find a way to bottle up the feeling of those first 2 hours and create a pill for it. Okay. Create a drop you can put underneath your tongue so you can reactivate that energy. It would be so great if I can the How To with John Wilson, the, What Time of Day of Week Are You? Those are very stimulating, but they never get to the giddiness the giggles, the just sort of like euphoria of like seeing someone you haven't seen in a long time and you just like have so much to connect on, you've kind of been like storing up. Yeah. Like, doesn't matter what time the flight lands. Could be 12:30 a.m., could be 10 a.m. As soon as you get in the car with that person or as soon as you get to their house, it just ushers in this wave of goodness. I truly believe. Episode 11's next revelation is another thing you can offer to your people, your community, and that is vigilante shit. Okay? Maybe some people view vigilante shit as being reckless or destroying things. I think we can reframe vigilante shit as creating things, contributing things anarchistically, right? You can follow the function and form of society and rely on your government to provide you with things, but that is honestly, it's peepaw. I was going to say it's lazy, but I'm like, it is kind of peepaw. It is kind of silent generation boomerville to be like, let me just rely on these external structures to provide what I need. No. When have they ever? You know? So what would constructive vigilante shit look like? Well, it might look a little something like noticing that, you know, your new apartment doesn't have any fall decorations out. Okay, actually, that's a lie. I literally planned to do this before fall even started. I love festivity. I love celebration. I love to celebrate people. I love to celebrate events. If I'm going to I think every episode I do this a little bit differently. If I'm going to sprinkle in one of the takings, How To with John Wilson, into a revelation, let me sprinkle a leaving into a revelation. Because life is not discrete. Things overlap and interconnect. Okay, that's another Catherautism. Everything's interconnected. Okay. One of my leaving is celebrating like traditional holidays. I'm over it. I'm done, actually. It's cost me more pain than pleasure, I think. Like on the aggregate, on the whole, I don't think trying to have New Year's plans, trying to have Halloween plans, trying to have goddamn 4th of... Like, why? I'm not the kind of person to celebrate 4th of July, okay? I'm not patriotic. I'm not a nationalistic person. Why do I still feel like I need to do something? Even if that something is just like having, you know, a little rooftop picnic with a friend or going paddleboarding. Like that, those things aren't necessarily celebrating this country and the atrocities of this country. Those are just celebrating summer, basically. But it's like, why do I feel like on that one day in July, I have to do those things, right? I just don't like compulsory anything, okay? Compulsory heterosexuality, no. Compulsory celebrating holidays, no. Get it out of there. Take a hike. I'm done. I also miss Wendy Williams so much, you guys. Like, sometimes I'm just speaking and I'm like, what would Wendy Williams have to say about this? And maybe one of the listeners is a friend of Wendy Williams. Wendy Williams, fellow Graves' disease warrior, rise up. She probably does little medical outing treats too. Honestly, I can really imagine Wendy Williams making her medical appointments a big outing and going to like a big brunch after. I can really picture that. Just quick aside for Wendy Williams, because I miss her so much. Yeah, I don't believe in compulsory anything. And so now I'm like, because basically my Halloween I went to New York, aforementioned trip to New York that I did in October for the purpose of like, well, first of all, to see my friend's comedy show and to see my friends. But I felt like I needed a compelling event to get out there because I was like, there's no specific date I have to be there. So it's like, which date do I pick? I kind of just picked, I was like, Amanda has a comedy show. Let me just use that as an excuse. And I can stay for Halloween weekend because I know I'll have guaranteed Halloween plans in New York because I know like a dozen people there. So there'll be plans formulating maybe in a more guaranteed way than they are in Seattle. Because last year in Seattle, I didn't really have like big Halloween plans. I like went over to a friend's for just like a little like hang, like a little dinner hang. But it wasn't like I'm really celebrating the holiday in a very big way. So this year I was like, let me celebrate the holiday in a big way. Let me outdo myself. Let me compete in the Halloween Olympics. And it fell apart. It crashed and burned. I wasn't able to even wear the costume that I brought, which was, it breaks my heart to say this. It was Marnie Michaels from the stronger cover scene of the famed TV show Girls, which would have been such a like euphoric costume. Is there another word for euphoric? Because I love the concept of like gender euphoria, like when you find yourself in perfect alignment with sort of like your truest gender. Like Marnie Michaels is my truest costume. Like I've been like back in the day when I wore my hair straight and Get Out came out, that was my doppelganger, you know? So I'm like, doppelganger, I hardly know her. Let me step into her. Wasn't able to step into her because I didn't have any plans. And then I was like, well, I could still like, you can see how my mind is running a train on this. You know, I'm running a train on Halloween. Like, doesn't need to be that forceful, but it just disappoints me. Like, I just feel a sense of disappointment every single holiday. Like, literally almost every single holiday, except for holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas. But again, those aren't even like, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, those aren't even occasions I want to celebrate. I don't want to celebrate the genocide of Native Americans. I don't want to celebrate what Christmas is the birth of Christ, except it's not even actually the birth of Christ. I'm not Christian. Like, I don't like, I'm like, why am I celebrating these things? To me, those, if you are celebrating those things and celebrate those things, to me, holidays are just an excuse to gather, an excuse to have festivity and to celebrate. But I'm like, why are we warding these things off to specific calendar dates? It's because we get the days off of work and work rules our lives. So when we all have the day off, let's take the day off. But I'm like, maybe I could coordinate with my friends to take a different day off and celebrate different things, such as the equinox, the solstice, little events. Like when I was out in New York, I did a podcast episode with Maddie Drosbeck, love her to death. So go listen to that Emotionally Online pod ep. We talked about so much and I spewed some very messy advice, I would say, at the end of it. So, you know, snack on that. Actually, it's probably more like a whole meal because it's like over an hour and a half long. But she celebrated, she had like a dinner party for like her 50th podcast episode. And I'm like, that's a great occasion to celebrate. You know, it's like, you don't need I love like a housewarming, you know, that's a great occasion to celebrate. I do want to celebrate this new home and I do want to bring people in. And the housewarming was another huge event from this month and in my consciousness, because that was the first time I'd ever hosted people in my new space. And as I talked about on my YouTube channel, I wanted to be more intentional about how I brought people in here and who I brought in and at what time. And like, that was an event I was so scared of because I've never hosted a party with friends. I've only ever hosted trips, but it was such a smash success by my own standards. Okay. Everyone has different standards for what a successful holiday or what a successful celebration might look like. For me, it's not like get bodies in the room. Sorry, my brain just traveled to Stop Being Poor by Z-Way, because the beat of it would be like, get the bodies in the room, let the dust hit the floor, stop being poor. So I also saw Z-Way last month. I'm really plugging into like my last month in this. Isn't that crazy? The podcast I'm making about my month, I'm really plugging into my month on. Huh. Anyway, my personal marker of success for like a gathering is not how many people I have there, but I felt self-conscious because I was like, are other people marking the success of a party by how many people are there? Like if you show up to a party and there's only 4 people there, are you going to be like, who the hell is this loser? I had no idea my friend was like the opposite of a socialite and an outcast. I was worried. Like I was genuinely worried what other people would think of me. I wasn't worried. I was like, if I have one person over, smash, you know, I don't need a bazillion people. And actually my apartment, probably 15 people came through over the course of the evening, 10 at one time. And that was kind of the maximum based on the amount of seating and the space I have. And it got actually warm. I jokingly put on the Partyful invite. Partyful is another thing I'm taking from October to November. I'm leaving celebrating traditional holidays and celebrating arbitrary ones, personal festivity, if you will. And I'm taking Partyful as a way to gather people for those events. I love Partyful. There was such a void created when Facebook left our social fabric, because that was how we used to make events. And I went on Facebook to go try to see like what past events I had done for some reason. And I found all of these birthday party groups and events that people had made in like middle school, high school. And they were so endearing and sweet. That was like such a beautiful way actually to bring people together because there was a feed that people could post on. Very sweet. I'm anti-group chat. You can learn more about that on my TikTok. I'm pro partyful. Okay. On the partyful, I specifically said, come warm my house with me so I don't have to turn my heating on, because I had it in October, it gets a little chillier. I didn't even have to turn my heating on. I had to open the windows. It got so steamy in there. People were really, I'm like, is that, because I was like joking like, oh, housewarming, let me have people over to warm my house. I actually think that's probably how, and I'll let Lena Daniels, my fact checker, come back on this one. That's probably why the name was coined. And if it's not, it should be in the modern sense. But yeah, we had probably 10 people, 15 total. And I was like, this is a great mix. I didn't have to facilitate any conversation. It went so well. Another thing I'm taking is apples and peanut butter, because I put out 3 snacks. I put out hummus and baba ganoush, and like pita. And then I put out warm, homemade oatmeal banana bread chocolate chip cookies from Foods of Jane. That's her blog if you want to make them. I love those cookies. The dough is so fucking good. I will be eating cookie dough till the end of time, even if it has egg in it, because my mother raised me that way. And the Berry household, if you made a huge vat of cookie dough, you made maybe one batch of like 12 cookies, and then the rest of the time you're on the couch watching Project Runway, watching My Life on the D-List, I used to grow up on that show about Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Bunnies. We would watch that. Like, my mom raised me on quality television, and I'm glad to see Holly, what is her last name? Anyway, she was a playmate, and she's blowing up on TikTok, and I'm like, oh, I grew up with her. Anyway, we were on that couch eating the cookie dough. So yeah, I had cookies, like dips, and then apples and peanut butter, because I thought it'd be a fun fall snack. When everyone got there, guess which snack they gravitated towards the most? Your guess is biased because I've already alluded to it. It was the apples and peanut butter. Everyone was stoked. I can't tell you how many people commented on that. And I was like, holy shit, apples and peanut butter. That is going to further the revolution. It's like, that's going to bring people together. That's going to keep people going. We need joy and we need motivation, and apples and peanut butter, incredibly motivated people to lean over and grab a slice. They're just so great. Anyway, so much success from the housewarming. But getting back to the original revelation that this was born out of, talking about vigilante shit, I think that it's so important to like put yourself out there and make constructive vigilante shit and be a disruptor, but like reframe that and borrow it from big tech and actually like disrupt in like a positive. Unfortunately, the way that they're using disrupt in tech is kind of the same way I'm using it, where they disrupt by creating something new and putting it in the marketplace. But I'm like, fuck the market, put it into your community. Make it something free, make it mutual aid, put it into your community, do a random act of kindness for no reason but that you appreciate your community and you want to give back to it. This apartment building, it hasn't given me that much yet, right? But I'm someone that's like, you got to give to get. That's what vigilante shit's all about. You put yourself out there, you see what comes back. A lot came back. For example, when I had the housewarming, I saw it as a good opportunity to get to know my neighbors. It's really important to get to know your neighbors, especially if there's natural disasters, especially if there's something that goes horribly awry with your landlord. Just in general, it's important to know your neighbors. They can really support you. And so I put a handwritten note on every single one of my neighbors' doors. And I said, come stop by the housewarming. Like, it'll be a good opportunity to snoop around my place. I know I'm like, if you're nosy like I am, because I know I'm curious about how people put their layouts together. I said, if nothing else, you can come grab a homemade cookie. Would love to put a name to the face on the call box. And just left the time and date and my apartment number. And I just put that on every single person's door. And then I left and I came back, and within 2 hours, they were gone off of most people's doors. So I was like, either someone ripped them off or people opened up their door and they were like, ooh-wee, and took it in. And then it was the mystery of how many people are actually going to show from this effort. I won't be disclosing how many people live in my apartment building, but I will say multiple folks showed up, and one brought a beautiful gift. It's actually very, very serendipitous and fortuitous and synchronous, because I had just thrifted three candelabras from Goodwill. They're so fucking cute. I can't wait to show you. I'll do a house tour soon, you guys. Just have some more stuff I'm waiting on. But I thrifted them, and then I thrifted one candlestick, but that was all they had. So I had 2 empty, and my neighbor brought 2 candlesticks. And I was like, either he could see the empty candelabras from the street, or he just had a premonition. And he actually is a spiritual guy. He uses a pendulum to support his intuition. And I learned that because he came to my apartment and we got to talking. So you learn interesting things. You live near interesting people, guaranteed. Another one of my neighbors literally was freshman year roommates with another one of my friends at the party. And I was like, what the hell? And then another one of my apartment neighbors is actually a professor, and she was really sweet, and she's lived here for like 30 years. And here's the biggest thing, you guys. My other neighbor that came that has lived here for 34 years, he said never once in his entire tenure of living here has anyone ever invited the apartment over for a gathering in their unit. I am a leader. I am a mover and a shaker and a disruptor. He told that to the whole room, and I was like shaking a little bit. I was like, I can't believe. I'm like, what does that say? What does that say about either the culture of Seattle, the state of society? And most people would say, oh, it's just the culture of Seattle. People are cold here. But like, I've literally talked to multiple people that have lived here for like 6-10 years that are friends with their neighbors. So I'm like, it's not that no one's friends with their neighbors here, you know? People are like, they're like, you just do that kind of stuff because you're a Californian. And I'm like, no, it's because I'm a communist. You're getting it twisted. So I felt really proud of myself for putting myself out there in that way and doing that vigilante shit. And I got the reward of meeting my neighbors and got a couple of their numbers and got to ask things about the building. And it was just really, it made me feel more woven into the fabric of my new life in my new neighborhood. And then the other thing I did for the building before the housewarming party, the predecessor to this, was that back to the festivity item, I believe in festivity and I believe in cheer, and I love to celebrate the seasons. And my last apartment, I had more sort of like outdoor real estate to decorate. This apartment, I don't have as much, but I was like, I want to put pumpkins on the steps in my building. It deserves to have pumpkins. And I highly doubted the laissez-faire management of this building would do anything. So when my friend Sharon was here, we literally carried pumpkins back from the grocery store, put them on the doorstep. And she was like, what if someone steals them? And I was like, well, if they steal them, they steal them. I just want to, even if they're out here for 20 minutes, 20 days, it makes me happy to see this. And it just looks so picturesque. And when I went to New York, everybody that had a brownstone was decorating their steps. And that was exciting to me because I'm like, yeah, if you own a brownstone, you should be proud because that is like a luxurious dream that most people will never accomplish. And also you should offer cheer to your community. So 2 days after I put that pumpkin out, go outside my door. One is missing. The right pumpkin gone. Turn the corner to meet my friend Jen. What do I see? 2 houses down. There's a pumpkin on the patch of grass that grows between the sidewalk and the road. That little strip, okay? If you live in a place that has sidewalks. I realize that a lot of people live in places that like literally don't have sidewalks. I'm like, how have we failed miserably that some people live in places without sidewalks? And maybe for some of you that's a sign of success because you're maybe walking on natural materials like dirt, grass, etc. But I'm thinking of places like Texas. When I was in Austin, Texas, you know how often I was walking on like roads, not even sidewalks. It was just not pedestrian friendly. Anyway, there was a pumpkin sitting there on that patch of grass, and I'm like, I haven't seen that so far. So I just walk down, I look at it. It has something drawn on it. So I'm like, maybe that's not my pumpkin because it's got something drawn. It has a witch's face drawn on it in a very cool style. So I'm like, most people don't draw with Sharpie on pumpkins, I'll say. They usually carve them, paint them. I did pull up the photo because I'm a documentarian and a historian, and it pays when you are because you have B-roll of your whole fucking life you can look back on. Pull up the picture, reference the stem of the pumpkin. It's a match. We're in. So what do? Pick up the pumpkin, take it back, return it to its landing. Okay. 2 days later, walking home, get to my door. There's now another drawing on the other pumpkin of a chicken. At first I thought it was dick butt and I got really scared because I was like, ugh, not someone vandalizing, right? I'm pro vigilante shit, anti-vandalizing. I am pro street art. I love graffiti. I love stickers. I love street signs. But I'm talking vandalism where it's something just like, it's like, did that really, like, it's not adding anything to the culture. You know, dick butt, that's a cultural detractor, I would say. And you can fight with me in the comments on that one. But chicken was drawn in a different style than the witch was. So then I had the mystery of, are these two separate artists? Are they accomplices? How come it was 2 days apart? And how come this is not happening to any other pumpkin I've seen in Seattle? Someone also slashed the top of the dick butt one, so the chicken one. So it rotted like so quickly after that. So I was like, why did they self-sabotage their own art piece? You know, they put an expiration date on it. They were like, this is going to be a sinking ship. It was such a fun little mystery that I got to discuss with my neighbors because I can't discuss mysteries on my TikTok anymore because people love to ruin them and call me a witch and a felon, basically. Which, like, felon isn't even a pejorative term because most of the people sitting in jail and prison rotting do not deserve to be there. They do not deserve to be there. Yeah. So yeah, it was a mystery. Never got solved. The people that live in my building didn't know who did it, but it brought me joy. And I was like, when you put yourself out there, you get stuff in return with the pumpkins, with the neighbors showing up to the housewarming party. And actually, fine, the final thing I'll tie off on that I've been sharing with people because I think it's very just karmic. I had a dream the night after I put those notes up on everyone's doors that I woke up and there was a note from my neighbors back to me, like passing a note back to me saying like, thanks for inviting me. Like, I can't make it. I'm like, oh, I woke up thinking it was real, you know, where I was like, oh, that just felt so vivid, you know, go about my day, leave. And as I close my door, I see there's a note on it from my neighbors that literally says like, thank you so much for inviting us. We can't make it. We have to work. Would love to come to the next one. And then later on that night, they literally left me a bottle of wine, like hope it was a good housewarming. I was like, see, I would have never had that interaction had I not put myself out there and done something that had never happened in the building before. It was just so heartwarming. I need to invite my neighbors over to drink that bottle of wine. I just haven't gotten around to it because ringing your neighbor's doorbell is kind of scary. I'm not saying this stuff is easy. It's intimidating and it's a little bit like black box. You don't know what's going to happen. But I feel handsomely rewarded whenever I do vigilante shit like that. Now we'll do some rapid revelations, some rapidlations, because we need to keep it pushing this episode. Yeah, we do. I managed to tie in a lot of things to a few. Now we need to tie in a few things to a lot of things. That was incoherent. And that's why rushing is never good. But in this case, we're going to try it. Because even when I learn a lesson, I still like to challenge the hypothesis sometimes, you know? Let me forget that I learned that for a second so I can relearn it. So, okay, revelation, rapid 1. I am not a practicer. I am a sight reader. For those of you that are musicians, sight reading is the practice. Sight reading is the opposite of the practice, okay? Sight reading is showing up to rehearsal, to performance, and you look at the music and you play it as you read it the first time. You've not practiced it, rehearsed it, etc., etc., etc. So the first time you play any piece of music, you are sight reading it, right? When I was a band kid, I would only ever sight read. I never liked to go home and practice on my own. Maybe because it was on my own, you guys. Like, I am such a communal based person, like socially motivated person. I was like not interested in practicing home alone because I didn't love the craft of trumpet playing that much. Piano, even now, it's like, I just want to sight read a little bit. I don't really care about getting that good at the piece. I just want to sight read it and play it and enjoy the experience. I don't really want to get that good at it. And that's carried into multiple departments of my life. I haven't been playing music that actively recently. I am in the market for a used piano now that I have space for it. So expect as soon as I get that, you will know. Not on this podcast channel, not even maybe on my YouTube channel, but certainly on my Instagram story and my TikTok. Because when I go home to my parents and I have access to a piano, it's so fun to do little covers, you know? I'm recording Marina and the Diamonds. I'm recording Casey Musgraves. I'm recording Sarah Bareilles. I'm in the stew. Okay, so beyond music, I've been trying comedy, right? We talked about that last episode if you haven't listened. And even with comedy, I have to write jokes. Some people just go up there and let it spew. But the practice of comedy is writing jokes, memorizing them, going off book, and performing them. I don't like to go off book. I don't like to rehearse. I want to write something, and the first time I'm reading it is on stage. But you can't go up there and just read. You can't actually sight read because you're supposed to go up there off book. You can bring a little notebook, but you're not going to be able to read word for word the joke. And that's a problem for me because I'm not a practicer. I'm a sight reader, but that doesn't work all the time. Rapid revelation number 2. Awkward social interactions, reframe, they're great because it means that someone cares. I find it when I can tell someone is like nervous while they're talking to me, it might not be about me, right? It might just be their own social anxiety or just their day's not going that great or they're just nervous, whatever reason. It's endearing to me though, because it means that they're invested in the performance and the success of this conversation. You're not nervous about things that don't matter. To me, it's like when I'm nervous about something, it means it matters to me. And so I think that it's very sweet when someone's a little awkward conversationally because I'm like, oh, that means that this matters to them and it's not just like a throwaway thing. You know, sometimes people are almost too confident while talking to you because they don't care about it. And they're just like, it's a fleeting conversation. So they're just like very headstrong about it. And they just kind of, oh, yeah. And then they turn around and talk to someone else. They just don't want to fuck with you that much. So it's sweet to me when someone's socially awkward. And sometimes I worry that when I'm awkward conversationally, that people are noticing and they're going, she's awkward. And I could give the type of advice, the very trite advice where it's like, no one's paying attention. I can't say that truthfully, you know? If I'm being authentic and honest and truthful and in my integritous bag, sometimes I do notice when other people are a little awkward talking to me. So I don't think it would be fair to expect that no one's noticing when I'm awkward. It's like, yeah, certainly people are awkward. The other day I was leaving the comedy club and I accidentally knocked over my chair like 70% of the way. So I caught it before it hit the ground, but then it had my bag on it and like a jacket. So it was all wobbly. And I was trying to leave quietly. And it was just it was humbling. But I was like, everyone's been there. I don't care that they noticed, right? I can't just comfort myself by being like, no one noticed. Cause I'm like, no, people literally were right behind me. They saw it, right? Maybe they even chuckled, but it's like, ultimately in that case, it's not very endearing that happened to me. Cause it's not like, oh, she really cares about this comedy show. I'm not saying that, but like conversationally it's endearing. Next, use value and exchange value. These are terms from the labor theory. I believe the labor theory of value, which is like a Marxist economic principle of like everything has an exchange value, the price it sells for, and then everything has a use value. This is getting into major fact check territory. I might be saying some misinformation here, but to the best of my knowledge at this present moment without looking it up and ruining the sight reading of this experience. Exchange value is the price it sells for. Use value is the actual like helpful nature of that object. So for example, like coffee might sell at $5 and a hammer might sell at $5, but those things have the same exchange value, but they have very different use values, right? You can't use coffee to hang up a picture, and you can't use a hammer to give you energy in the morning and drink it, you know? Upon watching How to with John Wilson, had the revelation that usually we want to maximize exchange value when we should be maximizing use value with the things that we own. If we're going to have material possessions and we're not going to be able to put everything in a massive library and rent and check things out and borrow them and exchange them with our neighbors and community, if we're not going to have that utopian ideal and we're going to own things personally, I find that a lot of people are really concerned, and I've been really concerned historically with maximizing the exchange value of that of that object rather than maximizing the use value. So what does that mean? If you buy, like, I had like an expensive designer jacket at one point, and I rarely wore it because I was so concerned about getting it stained on the bus or people judging me because they might think I'm materialistic, or which is so ironic, right? It's like, yeah, that's what happens when you buy designer things. But it's like, I don't want people to think I'm materialistic, but I'm also the kind of, it's dissonant, right? And that's why I sold the jacket, because it felt really dissonant to me that I owned something that was worth so much, but I didn't get much use out of it. And then I ended up thrifting a different jacket that looked similar, and I've gotten the use value of that is so much higher, even though the exchange value is way lower. And the episode of John Wilson was about people that cover their furniture with those plastic wraps. Those people are concerned with maximizing the exchange value, keeping that object in pristine condition so you can sell it again, or just so that it's like as close to the price you bought it at and the condition you bought it at as possible. No. Get use out of the things you own. That's the point of using them. But we've been convinced that in a free market economy, like capital-based, profit-based system, that exchange value is what we should be pursuing and considering and caring about. No. Use value is what you need to like put your mind towards. Okay. Moving along. We'll put the laptop on my titular lap for a moment to do the taking and leaving. Visiting friends at work. I'm taking that. I did that in New York, and I think it's so beautiful and wonderful to see how people spend so many hours of their life that you usually don't get a portal into. Flirting with strangers. Yeah. I feel like flirting with strangers is when I feel at my sexiest. Like, I feel like that really reveals my personality. When I'm able to reveal my personality to a new stranger, it's a little exciting. It's like, oh, how are they going to take it? Are they going to dish it back? And I had a really wonderful exchange while visiting a friend at work, and I still think about it to this day. Cryptids. I'm taking cryptid fascination. I learned the term cryptid this past month, and then I had very long bar conversation about various cryptids, and it's eerie, and it's actually like spooky and scary to me, but it's fascinating for that reason. I've also been enjoying the Heavyweight podcast because it's basically a series of podcast episodes about reunions and reconnections. So if you like past lives, if you like, stories of people coming back together, if you liked when I was talking about my preschool crush on an episode, maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago, you're going to like the Heavyweight podcast. And then I've also been enjoying, I have Miss Shayna Clee, the Purple Palace. I have her new journal out. And at the top of every page, usually my journals are blank moleskins or just blank pages or whatever I've, inherited over the years. I love to reuse just like whatever journals. Finally, I got through all the journals that I had sort of bought. So I was like, time to get a new one. And hers, at the top of every page, it says, I know where I belong. And I've enjoyed underlining that, putting an exclamation mark, just reminding myself of that affirmation, because I feel like that really has sunk into my consciousness, and I do feel like I know where I belong, and I enjoy thinking about that. And I recently, or last week, have started at the end of that sentence using it as like a fill in the blank. So like, I know where I belong with a cup of hot chocolate in my hand. I know where I belong, like on stage sight reading. It's like, I like being able to find micro parts of my personality and my identity that way. So I'm taking that into next month. And even if you don't have a journal with that, I think that's like a fun affirmation to do every day, is like, think about that day. Where did you feel a sense of belonging? Because I find that it's not a large, grand sense. It's small. It's like, oh, in this little instant, in this little interaction, I felt a sense of belonging. Yeah. Okay. Leaving, food poisoning. I did get food poisoning for the first time in many, many years. As a vegetarian, I feel like I usually, it's glancing for me. I rarely, overlap with food poisoning, but it must have been a bad egg or something because I had a sandwich when my friend Sheridan was visiting in October. And then we walked down to this little Russian bazaar, this little market. And then we were going to this park and I had to sit down, head between my knees. I was sickly. I thought I was bloated. I was like, what's going on? And then we're like, let's go get some sparkling water. I could not make it to the vendor of the sparkling water. Had to sit down. I was getting flushed, getting lightheaded. And then I did, in broad daylight, on a Sunday morning, in front of brunch goers, turn around and dispose of the egg in the way that my body knew how. And it was a bit humbling because I was like, these people probably think that I'm hungover as shit and a party girl. Meanwhile, I'm a narc. No, I have this one joke that I'm trying to figure out for stand-up comedy where I talk about like, I look like I didn't smoke weed until it was legal. Cause I know what I give. I know what I serve. And it's not often cunt. It's usually narc. But the thing is, I never was actually a narc. Like I was always supportive of all my friends and like them experimenting with whatever they want to experiment with. Your body, your choice. I believe in bodily autonomy. But for me, it was that way. So I'm like, little do they know that I'm literally a prude and don't even like drinking anymore. And that's literally legal. I'm leaving bottomless sugar consumption. As I mentioned, I don't know, guys, if I'm going to be able to leave this. I'm like, I'm the daughter of a pre-diabetic and the granddaughter of a pre-diabetic. It's in my future, in my forecast. I just talked about my doctor's appointments. I would love to not have to worry about my insulin levels. I would love to. But I'm also the daughter of a sweet tooth. How the hell? My mother's a sweet tooth and my dad's a pre-diabetic. That's Romeo and Juliet, babe. I am literally star-crossed. I'm also leaving Strangers to Ourselves. Little book rec. Some people want book recs from me. I'm like, you guys, I'm not reading like you think I'm reading. I have a book club on my Patreon and it's beloved because it encourages me to read because it's a social outlet. It's like mainly to me, book club, an opportunity. It's the same thing as How to with John Wilson. Same thing as board games. It's a prompt for discussion. Everything in my life is a prompt for discussion. On the podcast, in person, on the street, it's always a prompt for discussion. The book club's a great hang. Also, I did want to just release it here. I feel like the people that listen to my podcast, very good candidates for the book club. I forget to talk about it on my YouTube channel as much, but we are going to be doing The Artist's Way in January. So join the book club tier of the Patreon by the end of December. When December hits, when the next episode of this podcast comes out, let that be a prompt to join the book club Patreon tier if you want to be a part of that Artist's Way cohort. We meet weekly. It's a beautiful workshop. Friendships are forged. It's such a healing way to spend your winter. I miss it. Multiple people that I've done it with have also expressed how much they miss that time in their lives. Like it's a really golden, like it's a commitment, but it's so big. It's worth it because it's a commitment. You know, it's not just some fleeting thing you half-ass. It's like, it's worth it because it's like everyone is in the trenches with you. And then you get out of the trenches and you have an amazing creative life in front of you. So Strangers to Ourselves is a book that I read outside of book club, which is phenomenal. My friend Cam gave it to me. I love hand-me-down books. Now I'm looking for a prospect to give it to the next generation, you know, my legacy. And it was just a phenomenal read about the social, political, and cultural forces, economic forces that interact with mental illness. And her journalism, she does these basically like microbiographies of different people in different positions in the world with different mental illnesses in different decades. Oh my God. Rachel Aviv, talented beyond measure. I'm also leaving $9 spiced hot chocolate. It was the best thing that I drank. Maybe, I'm not going to say all year because I've had some really good milkshakes. Do I need to mention the sugar consumption again? No. And let it be clear, I'm worried about the sugar consumption because it might lead to a chronic illness, you guys. Some people think that it's like diet culture-y of me. No, it's literally just because I'm like, I don't want to have a lifelong diagnosis to come. The $9 spiced hot chocolate, Augie or Aggie's counter in Crown Heights in Brooklyn. Run, don't walk. Run, don't walk. When it's a $9 hot chocolate, you know something's afoot, right? You're like, why is it 9? Oh, when you're drinking it, not only is the dishware at that place beautiful, the tiling, the coloring, the service, the bathroom, the music, the vibes, everything was good. If you want to listen to Blood Orange while you eat Hungarian crepes, go there. Okay? All right. Let's fact check. Lena, what do you have to clock me on from last month's episode?
Hey y'all, it's Lena Daniel back with a fact check of last month's Revelatorium podcast. One technical detail on people from Denver. Catherine wasn't sure whether to call them Denverites or Denverians, and the technical term is Denverites.
This is a quick aside, maybe a good prompt for conversation. The terming of denizen, is denizen a word? Now I'm just fucking making a fact check out of a fact check. You know, the rabbit hole. It's a Russian doll situation. The naming and the conventions of what do you call someone from that city, it's not uniform. It's not, and it should be.
Another definition question was on what the meaning of Mazel Tov was or how to use it. And the Jewish phrase usually expresses congratulations or wishing someone good luck. So when Catherine mentioned someone getting a new cat, Mazel Tov would be an appropriate thing to say to them.
Okay. One thing I do like to do, or I like when I hear people do, is when someone like drops something and it breaks, they go Mazel Tov, right? Because usually it's like you step on the glass at the wedding and you go Mazel Tov. Did I already talk about this? I don't know. More from Lena.
Next is talking about being vulnerable in person versus online activities. And I just wanted to bring this up because there's actually a lot of studies talking about how being vulnerable on social media keeps us from real life intimacy because it makes you feel lonely from emotional dumping, and it doesn't feel like you're understood or trusted when you're online versus in person. You get real-time reactions. So when Catherine mentions her improv experience and how that seems more meaningful than sometimes just posting on the internet into this void where you don't really know what the impact would be, it's a very real phenomenon, and it has a lot of profound impacts.
Okay, what Lena was talking about there was that I've enjoyed live performance and doing stand-up because I feel like getting that live feedback is helpful. Although I will say I feel like I haven't been as vulnerable on stage as maybe I would on YouTube. I'm getting there. I think I'm vulnerable about different things on stage than I am on YouTube because the internet, when you don't know who's in the room, you're not able to disclose as much just for your own personal security and privacy. You know, but on stage, it's like you can see who's there. You kind of know, and also I can make more local references in stand up to like vulnerable things than you would understand if you don't know Seattle. Anyway, yeah, I think getting vulnerable on the internet would suck if you got no feedback. Like if you post on your close friend story and nobody responds to it, you're like, what's the point? Okay, what is the point of a close friend story? If y'all are not going to respond, I'm just going to put it on public so all my reply guys can chime in. I don't even have that many reply guys, you know. I think I have reply girls and persons. And that to me is another marker of success. Glasses come on to read your responses. The glasses stay on during sex. I struggled this month to narrow down your submissions to my Revelatorium form. Every month I open up the Revelatorium and turn the mirror back towards you so you can reflect on how the themes in my life might be popping up in yours. And something cool that I like about this practice is that you don't know the context in which I'm going to talk about that prompt. So this month I asked about like, have you ever felt like a true leader In what scenario? Where have you felt a strong sense of belonging? What non-traditional holidays do you celebrate? None of those things will you know that I'm talking about celebrating a housewarming or journaling about belonging or leading, a new building culture. You're not going to know that. And so sometimes the responses vary so widely. So we'll see how widely the leaving responses are first. What are you leaving in October? Put it in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, I'd love to read. Now I'll read for the folks that actually were able to submit this month. Fazia in the Yay area, baby, who's 23, wrote in and said, I'm leaving a friendship with someone who I was never brave enough to admit I didn't like that much because it felt like it would be akin to calling myself a bad person. How can you not enjoy the company of someone who is reliable and kind and everyone else seems to like a lot? One of the grandest mysteries of our lifetime. Why do we click with some people and we don't with others? Another theme explored on a recent episode of Exploration. And when I say recent episode of Exploration Live, I mean it was a year ago because I'm in their back catalog and I haven't gotten to present day yet on that. But they were talking about how it's hard to have a friend break up with somebody if you're just not feeling like you click and there's not some big reason. If they are reliable and kind and everyone likes them, how do you rationalize, oh, I don't want to spend time with that person? Sometimes it is just as simple as like, you don't have chemistry. You don't click. You're incompatible for whatever reason. And it's true that it doesn't make you a bad person, but it's also true that sometimes you feel like you are. You're like, I feel like I'm wrong for not liking this person, especially when you have the social proof of all these other people who do. You're like, why am I getting the ick? Why am I, but you want to believe that you can just find someone likable, but we're not that much in control of, our own, that wouldn't be sexuality, but it's like your compatibility. It's like, why, like attraction, platonic, romantic, whatever, is so hard to understand. It's like, why am I attracted to that person? And why am I not attracted to that person? We're always asking ourselves, why am I attracted to that person? Because sometimes it's like a character you would not expect to. You usually can find some answers of why, but it's hard to answer, why am I not attracted to that person? Like sometimes there's a few in here talking about, confessing your feelings to somebody. And it's like, why can't, I just was showing, my friend Tiffany, the clip from Little Women where it's Timmy and Saoirse on the hillside when he's confessing her love. He's confessing his love to her and she's just like, I wish I could feel that way towards you. And I just can't. I can't remember the specific line. Maybe Lena can grab it for the next. You can come back next time instead of Googling it yourself if you want to hear me deliver the monologue. It's such a fucking good monologue, you guys. It's Little Women season. November is Little Women season. It's like you can't force yourself to feel a certain way as much as you want to. So giving you grace to leave that friendship in October, even if everyone else is fine with it. And that's kind of awkward because it's like, well, how do you explain to those people why you're not hanging out with that person when it's not like a huge reason? It's just like, no, not for me. They're not for me, but they can be for you, right? I'm not going to smoke weed until it's legalized, but you can do whatever you want when you're 14. Okay. Oh, exactly. Literally next one, anonymous from San Jose, California. So someone also in the Bay Area, Fazia, but who's 24, look at that, so similar, said, I am hopefully leaving my unrequited feelings for my best friend. I've had these feelings for the last year and a half, and it's really taken a toll on me. We've been long distance now for a while, so the feelings aren't as strong as before. And it's like, God, so many feelings go unrequited, and it's just so frustrating. It's like, why can't you feel that way? And it sounds like, when it's a best friend, it's like, this person does like me. They're my best friend. They like me, but it's just this one missing link of like, why don't they feel that type of attraction for me, but I do for them? So giving you grace as well. Bria in Virginia, who's 21, said, for what they're leaving, literally my grandmother. She passed away October 20th after a long year of health complications. She was truly one of the best people to grace the planet. So leaving such a bright light behind and getting used to navigating with a dimmer view, while working to increase it back to the same brightness as it was, is hard to say at least. There are good days and there are bad ones, but overall, I've gained a true feeling for life that I didn't have before. Her death made the word temporary feel real. I'm leaving behind solitude in October because I learned that there comes a day I want to get to share time with people I care about. The community that came out and supported my family showed me that I can trust, I can be there, and I can love other people with them loving you back. My grandma left behind so much love, and I got to feel all the love my grandma received, and it made me understand the beauty of family, friends, and overall. That's why it's so important to me, like why I have my quote unquote close friends conferences. And the point of a close friends conference, if you're not familiar, is I want all 50 something people on my close friend story to meet before I die. I think it would be a travesty if that many wonderful, loving people, amazing people did not at least get to meet one time. And it's not to say that they're all going to love each other and be compatible. No, not all my friends like all my friends, but there's probably someone in there that would really add something to their life. And if I wait until my funeral, because who knows if I'll have a wedding, if I wait until my funeral for them all to be in one room, it's too late. It's too late. I won't be there anymore to be the connective tissue. So it's beautiful to hear you say that you got to see all that love your grandma received, and it was so powerful, because that is such, it's such a fucking shame that you don't get to see that at your own funeral. That's why I'm like, we need to create more arbitrary celebrations so that people can get together in a room and, you know, experience each other's company like that. But I wanted to basically make space for your grandmother and honor her memory. I love to share in a Coco fashion, another October, that's an October movie. And in a Coco fashion, furthering someone's memory is like so powerful. And I love to lift up memories of people's loved ones that have passed. Anonymous in Chicago said so much of October was literally shit. Overwhelming work, interpersonal conflicts, lacking sleep, all while there is a literal genocide going on. So I'm just hoping that November is better. Yeah, I'm hoping that November is better on a global scale, on a personal scale. There's a lot of survivor's guilt I feel that we're all going through right now, and just a lot of confusion over exactly the right ways to exercise political action. If you are someone that is invested in liberation of oppressed peoples everywhere, Sudan, Congo, Palestine, Armenia, etc. So I was not surprised to see many responses just advocating for how rough October was. Sarah, who's 23 in Houston, is leaving her depression clothes chair. After a solid few weeks of living in pretty bad clutter, I finally got myself to do a deep clean of my apartment, and it feels great. I only did the deep clean because I got notice that my apartment building was doing the fire system inspections and that they'd have to enter each unit for it. So did I really motivate myself to do the deep clean? No. Did I do it only because I didn't want the random fire inspection people to see my mess? Yes. Was it ultimately still good for me? Yes. And here's the thing. I included this response because I was just like, is it bad to rely on external motivation for some things? Do we have to have an internal locus of motivation for everything? Like, I think like there are some unsustainable external motivation tactics you can turn to. There can be some unhealthy or toxic or like maladaptive motivation techniques. But to me, I'm like inviting people over. This isn't exactly inviting people over. They invited themselves over, but like inviting people into your space as a reason to clean up, totally justified. You get a hang out of it and you get the encouragement to do something if you're someone who's socially motivated. Peyton, who's 22 in Ohio, said she's leaving pining, yearning, crushing, etc. There's always someone taking these and there's always someone leaving these. And for me, it's neither. It's not. These are absent in my life right now, except for the brief flirtationship I had with aforementioned stranger. But fortunately, I'm not yearning. I'm just wistfully thinking back to that interaction, and it calms me. Braylon, who's 31 in Portland, said she's leaving, not feeling grounded, the transient housing I had, and lack of true nest/safe space. Yes, we'll talk about belonging in a minute, but like having that true shelter, like literally shelter, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom one, right? Lena, check me on that. It's the bottom one, right? It's like you need shelter to feel okay and secure in this world. And so it's funny at times because I also sometimes feel like, oh, I should be fine living out of a suitcase and traveling around, or having transient housing. But no, it's like, we're just little animals. Of course we don't feel good when we don't have our habitat, when we don't have our enclosure to do enrichment in. Actually, animals in the wild didn't have enclosures, so habitat is more accurate. Helen, who's 20 in Germany, said, I'm leaving behind my teenage years because I just turned 20 in October, and with it, I'm leaving the romanticized idea of a teenage love I always had. I didn't really get to experience it, and though it's kind of sad, it's also fine, and I can still have cute experiences and firsts, even if I'm not a teenager anymore. Yeah, that's hard to detach yourself from, right? It's like we're attached to being like, here's the vision of the life I had for myself, but not everything's in your control, especially attraction and requited feelings and such. Like even now I'm like, I like haven't been in a relationship for so long. I'm like, oh, I really feel like, there's a place in my life for like a long-term, like committed relationship type of thing. And I would like to have that in my late 20s. Like I would like to have another, relationship to learn from and to grow in and whatnot. But it's like, I'm just accepting that it's not my time. And I love watching TikToks. I love having mentorship, but in lieu of mentorship, I love going to random strangers on TikTok who are talking about, I'm 50 and I didn't have my first boyfriend till I was 44 or something. And I'm like, holy shit. And she's like, thank God, because everybody else was a loser. And I was like, yeah, would rather be single than date a loser. So it's like, would you rather have had a would you rather have had a loser as your teenage relationship and your teenage love, or just not one at all? I think, there are bumbles, there are trials to finding love, but it's like, in general, I'd rather not bump around in the dark. I'd rather just wait till I find the light, like it would be nice if I could just turn the switch on, see it there, and not have like these things. So that's such a, like, I think that'll probably follow us at every age, is kind of the expectations we have at that age and trying to detach ourselves from that. Now for taking, what's following us into November? What are we allowing to cross the threshold? Lauren, who's 21 in Knoxville, said a couple really good job offers despite the abysmal state of the job market. And I wanted to include this one because of how many job-related confessions were revealed last month because of the question I had about rejection. If you've listened to that episode, number 10. And so it's positive and it's encouraging to see some people are making it through. Keep the faith, hold out on the hope. Keep the faith, keep your faith. Whoa, whoa, it's the climb. That was my rendition of The Climb by Miley Cyrus. I made a song about genetic cloning in AP biology in 11th grade to the tune of the tune of that tune. So it's always in my consciousness. And I think every time I say keep the faith, it will always resurface. Lily, who is 26 in Minneapolis, shared that she's reflecting on how I can be more intentional with my friendships in November. I had something of an existential crisis / mini depressive episode this month about feeling lonely in my city. When I moved here a little over a year ago, I had a lot of friends that I would see regularly. Life happens, some friendships ran their course, and some friends moved away. The vast majority of my social time is spent with my girlfriend's friends. Don't get me wrong, they're all lovely, and I've hung out with a few one-on-one, but they're not my friends. They haven't known me for years and know my quirks and idiosyncrasies. I wouldn't call any of them in an emergency or to spontaneously hang out, so I'm trying to be more intentional about pouring into the friendships that are primarily. I had a really good talk with a former roommate / friend from college about this, and she felt the exact same way. We're going to try to see each other more often, and hopefully that will help quell our loneliness. Yeah, there were so many responses because I talked a lot about belonging in this survey about friendship. And it even made me feel insecure where I was like, have I found the right people? Am I engaging in my social life the right way? Have I achieved success? And there's such an ebb and flow and an oscillation of like security in friendship. And it's like, we don't want to believe that we can feel really full a year ago with our friendships, and then a year from now, we could not. I want to feel like if I reach a level of fulfillment with my friendships, that it'll hold for the rest of my life. But unfortunately, people do move, friendships change, like scenarios change. And it's like making peace and again, like detaching from, that sort of like expectation you had a year ago. And it sounds like now you're settling into new expectations of like, the expectation is I have my girlfriend's friends, but I also need to pour back into some of my own. And so I just really appreciated you reaching out about this. I like to think about relapse beyond just sort of the principal way we think about it in terms of addiction. And sometimes you can relapse in friendship and you can kind of pull back and you're like, wait, how did I get here? You're like, how did I get here when it was so good at that point? So it's malleable, and I have little crises all the time and little depressive episodes all the time, especially in the last few months. I would say that's been happening all of the time. Not like full mentee B crying breakdown, but just sort of like real moments of insecurity and questioning and like self-judgment. Allison, who's 27 in Grand Rapids, said this to the question of what are you taking with you? New friendships and my oldest friendships. Since losing a lot of friends from a breakup, I've had to enter new spaces and meet new friends. I'm seeing the beginnings of blossoming friendships with people that freely give love and make plans. As someone who is always the initiator and probably attracted to avoidant people who require a chase to further validate my feeling of being unlovable and not good enough, if we're getting real therapy here, LOL. Yeah. It's a breath of fresh air to feel like the load is balanced. I'm also nurturing my friendship with my lifelong best friend who lives in another state. We've been friends for 22 years and have grown apart at times, but we've always been family to the other person. Lately, we've been spontaneously FaceTiming almost every night and it just feels like home. I've never laughed so hard or been seen so much by another person, and amidst some very real loneliness I also feel so loved. Yes, and yes. I am the initiator as well, and I'm coming out with a new video on another Cather Out friendship census. If you liked that video on my main channel, I filmed one in New York, and one of the questions I asked was sort of, what are people the initiators, and how do they feel about that? And I've never thought about it in terms of like, oh, the other person's avoidant, but it does sort of make me feel self-conscious when I look at a friendship, and I'm like, if I pull away, would they push, If I stopped initiating, would they come to me? And I think when I get into those thoughts, I'm like, are those thoughts helpful? If we're talking about therapy, you brought it up. You're the one that brought it up, okay? If we're talking about therapy, that is something my therapist always encourages me to ask. Is like, is this thought helpful? And it's like, no, it's not helpful for me to like posture and wonder and speculate about like what would happen to our friendship if this, and this. It's like, I don't need to stir on those things, I would rather stir on how much I love a long distance best friend, like you're saying. And coming home to a FaceTime is something I do constantly. And that's another question I asked on the street, is if people FaceTime a lot, because I certainly do. And it's like, I love those FaceTimes. And if someone looked down on me for having so many like virtual friendships where I don't see them more than a couple times a year, I would say poo-poo. I would never turn down a friendship with someone that sees you so much. And I think it's wonderful to spend more time on that. And like, I love the seasons of my friendship where I can FaceTime someone like a lot, It's really fun. And I have a few friendships where we're kind of easing out of that because their life situations changed. They're a lot busier now. And it's like, oh, I miss when those FaceTimes were happening more often. Sarah in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, who's 35, said she's taking the pain of the genocide happening in Palestine, the hope for a better tomorrow for us all, especially my kids. And yes, certainly, as I was talking about before, this crisis is on a lot of our minds. I can see that in the survey, and certainly on mine. And I wish we could leave all the pain generated from this crisis in October, but we haven't achieved political change. We haven't achieved the justice we're seeking. So we have to keep it pushing. And it's like, I wish so desperately we'd already found a resolution. But thankfully, from reading this, it sounds like a lot of folks are really showing up and committing to taking political action. So Bria said, a need for peace. I went to Kentucky with my best friend to visit her family's farm, and it was so quiet. There was no one around us for miles. No streetlights, grocery stores, nothing. The sky was vibrant and blue at night. It was so clear you could see the galaxy dust in space. It felt so empty but so full, and I never felt so clear-headed in my life. Slow is good. It's okay to not rush. It's okay. I've been finding my peace more than I've been sacrificing it, and I hope that continues into November. Yeah, there's something to be said for wide open spaces. That does something to your psyche. And having just been in New York City, probably the most narrow, closed space, like it just feels like very dense in that way. That's a very different environment where I just felt like I was seeing too many people every day. Like I actually just felt like I'm not meant to see this many people in a calendar day. And it's like, it was just a lot more stimulation than I'm used to. And that's how I felt the last time I went to New York too. So it's really nice that you got away for a retreat. Well, you're from Virginia, so you're not from New York, but just in general, thinking about the sizes of cities and what it's like to even just coming back to Seattle, I was like, oh, it's nice that when I'm walking on the sidewalk, I'm not passing somebody at every constant second. It's like I'm only ever passing somebody maybe once every minute. Okay, we're going to close out with 2 last questions. First off, have you ever felt like a true leader? In what scenario? So I was a mover and a shaker and a builder and a linker with my building. And I was curious to see if you've ever felt like a true sense of like, oh, wow, I really offered leadership in that moment. We'll hear from Sam first, who's 23 in St. Louis, Missouri. And they said, the first time I felt like a true leader was in marching band senior year of high school. I had been unhappy with how things were run within my section freshman through junior year. So when I was named section leader, I decided to do what I hadn't seen any of my past section leaders do: create a community. I planned events, created rituals, and got us matching clothes. It was the most fun I'd had in marching band, and to this day, my friends will say it was their favorite year of band. It clearly made an impact on my peers' high school marching band experience. It was a big learning experience because it showed me the power I had to change my community and see a vision through. This was the first time I realized I enjoyed being a leader. I'm someone who usually has a clear idea of what I want, and being in a leadership position allows me to crystallize my ideas. I too have a clear vision of what I want, usually. And maybe that does lend itself more to leadership, but I loved this response because it, again, speaks to the power you have to change culture as one person. Like, it is not nothing. You have power and you can affect change. And like I was talking about with influencing people to show up to different events or, befriend people. It's like so beautiful that you got to create an experience that people said was their favorite year. Like, that would make me feel so accomplished as a leader. I love this one from Shelby, who is writing in from Savannah, Georgia. She's 25. She said, when I'm the first on the dance floor in a room of people sitting or standing on the wall. That's leadership. I will provide leadership when there's food out, a buffet of food out, and nobody wants to take the first scoop or the first plate. Or like that would happen all the time in corporate America. They'd have free food and no one would want to kind of like open up the box or like take the first pizza slice. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'll do it right now. I don't like to be timid. And so it sounds like you know that your leadership is best provided on the dance floor, and we're better for it, I'm sure. Eli, who's 29 in DC, said, at a football game, my team won, and on the way out, I started singing our fight song and clapping to the beat all by myself just for fun and because I was happy. But then the other fans of my team around me joined in the clapping. So I accidentally found myself leading dozens of people in the song and subsequent chants as we walked out of the stadium. And it's that simple, folks. It's that simple. If you do something boldly and in a committed way, folks might join. And like, I was at a protest the other day and I've really loved acknowledging people like leading chants for the first time. I feel like you can kind of tell when someone's like, there's like certain, if you've never been to like a protest or like a rally or a march, there are certain chants that you'll do, like certain, phrases you'll repeat back and forth. It's a part of the culture. And it was really cute because at the one I was at, the person on the megaphone needed to take a break. And so they were like, hey, can you guys just like lead your own chants for a minute? And so we started to, and very quickly, one man rose above the rest as very loud, more outspoken. And I was like, he's really getting us going. I acknowledged his natural true leadership in that moment where I was like, we seem to all be kind of following him. In this group of however many, 50, 100 people, he somehow marked himself as a leader, And then I was so happy to see the person with the megaphone came back and like motioned to him to come over. And she literally set him up with the mic and the megaphone so that he could then actually get on the mic and be more, sort of official. And he was eating it up. I was like proud of him. I was like, this is his calling, It's like everyone has a different role in, community at an action kind of stuff like that. And he had found his. And there was another time where there was a person like holding a sign, a couple people to the left of me, who was starting chants. And sometimes they'd mess up a little bit, but I was like, that's what it takes to be a leader sometimes. It's like, it's a little exposed. It's a little vulnerable. You might be a little timid, but you just got to put yourself out there. I love when you can lead somebody into song or into anything synchronized like that. Sam, who's 23 in Alabama, said, "It has been difficult for me to feel like a leader in my life, especially as a late diagnosed autistic adult. I've been convinced over my lifetime that the way I do things is wrong. I mess up so much that failure is like home to me. The only times I feel like a leader are the times I get to have a little control and actually want that responsibility. And like I said, I put these prompts out and I never know the responses I'll get. And this completes, the range. It's like, no, not everyone has felt like a leader. And I actually thought when I asked this question, most people would be like, no, I'm not a leader. Because I have been told I'm like a natural born leader, but I've always sort of like pushed back against that. Cause I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? But it's like, there are moments I've discovered leadership in a personal sense, not like, a appointed sense. Like, not like you were elected leader. It's like, no, I found myself leading. It's like you almost just blink and you're like, wait, I'm leading right now. This is not what I thought. This is a good example of that. Anonymous said, I always feel like a leader when I intentionally include people in conversation or when I go out of my way to stand up for something when in a group. I dislike being in charge of people, so I haven't put myself in a situation to lead by classic definitions in a while. But most of the times where I felt like a leader have come from groups where I wasn't in charge, like a team where I wasn't captain or a random group of people. Exactly. I like when things are very collaborative, horizontal, not hierarchical. I like to facilitate. I don't like to teach, right? It's like I like to support the group, and that is leading, right? A facilitator is a leader in that it's like you got the group together and you're making sure it's happening, but it's like you're not dominating or have authority over them. Peyton, who's 22 in Ohio, said, I feel like a true leader whenever I'm with my little siblings. Being their big sister is a huge part of my identity, and I feel so content and comfortable being in that role. I feel like the things I like most about myself come out when I'm acting as a leader in that capacity. It just feels so natural to me. And I feel like my sister never enacted leadership on me. I actually felt like we were very much peers. Like I didn't feel like my older sister was like a leader. I felt like sometimes I was leading her. So it's always interesting to hear about other people's sibling dynamics. Okay, little continuity error Easter egg for those watching on video, because I just had to take a break to jump on a family Zoom call, which feels more like a team sync than what you probably think it would be. But I'm back. This episode is just taking a while to get through because honestly, this was a very full month. It was a month where I probably could have done like a weekly revelatorium because I was having so much insight. Probably because I had a friend come visit me and then I was traveling and I saw a bunch of people I hadn't seen in a while. That's a pretty good recipe for revelation. Like if you personally don't have a lot of revelation in your life, I would consider, maybe booking a trip if you have the funds, or inviting a friend to come stay with you if you don't, or just seeing fresh faces, putting yourself out there, etc., etc. That is how you get revelations, is by adding some novelty to your life, or doing something so many times that you have to confront it head on. Maybe I'll do an entire segment, one of these. Maybe I'll do like end of the year, sort of like overarching macro view of like, how do you lead a life of revelation? I'm like an introspective person by nature. I've actually had 3 men tell me this year that I'm wise. And no woman has ever told me that. I'm like, huh. But I'm like, maybe I'm the only woman they've ever listened to. And so in that case, they're like, wow, I'm listening to a woman for once. She must be wise, because otherwise, why would I do this? No, I don't need to discount those compliments, but I'm like, every time someone says that, I'm like, I push against it, because I'm like, oh, I'm just an introspective person. But because I've been receiving that compliment, I've been trying to give that compliment because it feels good when I receive it. So I'm like, it probably feels good for other people to receive it. People also push back. People don't like to accept that, because I feel like we have a very high reaching definition of wise. But I'm just very introspective. I've always been this way. And so things come to me, and more things came to me this month. All right. Finishing out the leader question. I had to highlight Anonymous from Santa Cruz, who mentioned that she's not a leader at heart and almost couldn't think of an answer here, which made me almost sad. I recently felt like a leader, though, when I brought my friends on a sunset bike ride around our neighborhood. Even though we live here, I'm the only one who knows the ins and outs, side alleys, and secret passageways of our area, since I bike around almost every day. I honestly felt grounded, cool, and proud to share these little things with them. That's sexy. That's attractive. That's hot. Like, I love biking. I don't need to get into my personal love and relationship with biking, because I've discussed it at length on other episodes, but like, it is so like admirable to me when someone gives you a lesson in their world. You know, they teach you something from their experience. They do, that's the gist of PowerPoint nights, but I want to have like a skill sharing night in my apartment where someone just sort of like, here's, they choreograph something and they teach us a dance, or they show us how to darn, or sew or something, Anyway, I just think that your friends should feel lucky and grateful, because I would like to be taken on a sunset bike ride around Seattle. I would like to. Putting that out there, if you're listening to this and you know me, I would like to be taken around on a sunset bike ride, but I feel that I am probably the one that's in the best position to do so. Because I don't know that many people that bike. Fiona, who's 29 in Scotland, said that she felt like a true leader when I navigated New York and took my model, I'm a mother agent, to various test shoots. And I pinned this one because I was like, mother agent? We need to get that in Mike's vocabulary. Mother agent. She's a real mother agent. This is another fact check opportunity, but I have to, in my ignorant mind, mother agent would mean that it's a teen model and you take her around and chaperone her like you're a mother. And I just think that's a fascinating experience. I would love to see a vlog of a mother agent. I would love to see a documentary of a mother agent's life. To me, that's a very unique perspective. And we'll close out with, where do you feel a strong sense of belonging? Around which people, places, and things, past or present? Harkening back to my little journal affirmation fill in the blank exercise. I had you guys fill in the blank because I was curious if you've given it any thought. And at least one of you, Lauren in Knoxville, Tennessee, again said, I belong in cities with charm and character. Yeah. I remember filming a vlog maybe a few months after I moved here, where I talked about how important it is to come up with a definition of your own quality of life. Like, what to you means high quality of life? Is it 15-minute walkable city? Is it having access to lakes and rivers nearby? Is it being in a dense place where you have 16 amazing restaurants nearby? You're like, what does quality of life mean to you? And charm and character is one. For me, it's kooky-ookie. Okay, it's kooky-ookie. I'm looking for eccentric, offbeat types. That is what I like to see, because it frees you up and shows you that it models that you don't have to seek being acceptable. You can seek to be odd. Emma, who's 24 in Italy, said, I completely belonged to the apartment I shared with my best friends last year. I know, the dream. It's heartbreaking not having that anymore. I always belong in the Italian mountains where my ancestors are from, but the mountains call you and then push you back. It's such an unforgiving environment. And if you're speaking about the Dolomites, you're blessed to have ancestry there, because that seems like a sacred place I've always wanted to go. And I liked how you described that the mountains call you and then push you back, because I've never lived in the mountains, but I've always desired living in a mountain town. And that makes sense to me, that they push you back and call you in. I've been called in, but I haven't been pushed yet. And mountain climate is very unforgiving. It can change like that. Like you have to have a million layers on at all times. Becca, who's 23 in Pennsylvania, said, lately I felt a great sense of belonging while with my friends, which is crazy to say because for the longest time, I never really had a group of people, of friends, that made me feel that way. I also always feel belonging while in nature. It doesn't matter if I'm completely alone. There is just no better feeling to me than communing with the trees. And I included this on two fronts. Overwhelmingly, most of the responses were about friends or nature. So much nature, so much nature. And I don't know if that's a reflection on me and the internet. The internet users I've gathered here, but I feel the exact same way. And I just had to at least pick one representative of those feelings. I couldn't read them all because it was actually getting redundant, which is kind of refreshing. It's like, oh wow, there's a variety of responses, and then there's also like a strong like mode or like most common response. This is going to take you on a journey, so strap in. This is a longer response, but it's going to be the right one to close out on. It starts with, who wrote this? Hannah, who's 21, writing in from her newly acquired couch. And she said, Kath, you are going to love this. Okay, excellent way to start a response, may I say. Immediately hooked and pulled in. She said, so I have a newly acquired friend. I'm already in. I feel like we were a slow burn friendship. Again, I'm already in. We lived together last year and we chatted mostly about you and how we both liked your videos. But we didn't hang out or were what I would consider a friend. Again, I'm in. Hello? Two people that know each other and both watch my videos? Unheard of. I mean, I'm like, it definitely exists, but it's like, I'm like, oh. Because I have a ton of YouTubers that me and my friends mutually know, but it's like, I can't imagine me being that person for someone else. It's like hard for me to wrap my head around. Okay. Didn't consider a friend. Then right before the summer started, we both found out that we had been wanting to play tennis. So we started playing, and this really beautiful friendship grew out of this. Then last month we were hanging out and you dropped Revelatorium and I suggested listening to it. We had both been listening and kind of infrequently filling out the responses. We had never listened to it together before, so there we were, lying on the hard concrete floor of my dorm room with my $20 carpet. But this fateful time we did. And then you picked both of our responses, which to me is especially magical because I don't put my location on these, so you didn't know that we lived in the same city. It felt fated and magical, like the universe looking down and saying seeing it was all meant to be. And as I've stated before, everything's interconnected, and it's, to me, a fun exercise to give meaning to insignificant things. I did watch a Nicole Raffi video where she talked about how now that she has been diagnosed with OCD, she sees that previously when she was giving meaning to pure coincidences that it was hurtful for her OCD. But depends what type of distorted thinking you have, I suppose. All right. She said, all this to say, I can honestly say there's been a few people in this world who have made me feel like I belong the way that Emma does. She listens to everything that I have to say and responds with so much love and support and thought. She allows space for me to be my whole self. She's so deeply funny and hilarious and willing to unapologetically be herself in a way that feels like it's creating space and not taking mine. She wants to be a teacher, and it makes me so happy to know that the next generation of kids will have someone with so much joy to teach them. I love her so much. This year hypothetically could have been hard for me. Going into this year, I knew I needed some new friends and I was nervous about that, but then there was Emma. I've left the reaction shot from when she realized you were talking about her in your last episode in the upload spot below. I think it shows how much light and joy she brings to my life and so many other people's. I'm not sure she knows how lovely and wonderful she is, but I can see it, and now so can others. Holy hell. Okay, so to close the loop on the upload spot, on the form, for those of you that have never clicked the link when I drop it on my community tab and on my Instagram story, I now have a section to upload your own art or your doodles or photos you've taken or little poems or just any type of like media you have, pictures of stuff you've created, so that we can use it to put together the zine that I've been working on with a bunch of other listeners. And so if you want to see the image of Emma, It probably will not be out until like the zine comes out. So maybe January, December. So it'll be a slow burn. It'll be a payoff, but I haven't looked at it yet. And now I'm like really excited to go through all the stuff that you've all submitted, which I'm always excited to go through. And let me just say that if I don't like read your response aloud on these episodes, I'm still reading them to myself and thoroughly enjoying them. I just simply cannot read them all, and that's the purpose for the zine, is to put more in and have an outlet for more of these. But I'm so glad that you found each other. I love when people give really in-depth descriptions of why they love their friends. I think if I were to write a book on friendship, it would be a series of vignettes where I really detail like why each friendship is unique and sacred to me. So, okay, actually we're going to do a bonus rapid round because there's one more question that I didn't see on this Excel sheet. And I was dying to tell you all the responses to this because I asked you all, are there any non-traditional holidays that you celebrate or personal holidays you've invented so that I can add them to my list and finally stop celebrating Halloween, New Year's, and 4th of July. Those are the 3 worst holidays in my book. Okay, number 1, we have Anonymous, who's 26 in Ohio, who celebrates Crab Rangoon Thursday every week to celebrate the end of the school week. Everyone is encouraged to celebrate. Love that. I love that. Sounds akin to my donut medical outing. Olivia, who's 22 in Salt Lake City, said half birthdays are fun, especially if they're B-days during Christmas time or 9/11. I think if your birthday is 9/11, you should celebrate. Okay? What the fuck? Are people not allowed to celebrate their birthday if it's on 9/11? Okay. I don't even know. May Day, International Workers' Day as well, because that's when the rest of the world celebrates workers' rights and whatnot. I would love to have more of a May Day celebration. I feel like there should be some sort of, I don't know, picket line or something. There should be some sort of strike, something to do on International Workers' Day. And maybe there was, but it just wasn't promoted enough because I didn't see it. I didn't hear anything about it. Zaid, who's 26 in New York City, said, I turned my cancer remission anniversary into a personal holiday. This year I hit 5 years, treating myself in whatever nonsensical, over-the-top way imaginable for surviving a harrowing ordeal. Yes, yes, and more yes. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Personal holidays to you that you can invite other people to celebrate you for. Absolutely. This one gave me an ijbol moment. Okay. Quirked up shoddy, who is 26, who's writing in from the company office. Men make dollar, I make dime. That's why I revelatorium on company time. Okay, comedian, which open mic night can I find you at? Because they had some good shit. All right. They said, she said, I try to celebrate Leif Erikson Day, October 9th. Multiple of you said this, by the way, with my dad because of our love for SpongeBob. The show references the holiday in the Bubble Buddy episode. But this is also the day he confronted me about smoking weed in 2018. Dun, dun, dun. I got real scared. I was quaking. Then I read, this is a holiday for us because in the same breath of him confronting me about doing bong rips in the childhood home that I lived in during the college years, he bust out his own stash, and we have been smoking casually together ever since. Hinga-dinga durgan. This is what they say in the episode. P.S. I totally forgot to celebrate with him this year. Maybe it has something to do with the forgetful properties of the plant. I am obsessed with that. I'm speechless. More. Alicia, who's 23 in LA, said, not sure if this counts, but I love to celebrate album drops as if they are national holidays. My friend and I have been dabbling into mixology, so we've been making themed cocktails for songs and albums, and it's something I really look forward to. I want to start inviting people over for New Music Friday, which is at 9 p.m. Pacific on Thursday night. I think it would be so fun if there was like a particular album. I know people do this for like Taylor Swift, like listening parties are not new, but I want to be more religious about celebrating new music I'm looking forward to with some, but it's hard to find people that are as excited about it as you are at times. But I am delighted by that tradition. Another ijbol from Peyton, who's 22 in Ohio. This is silly, but every year a group of my friends and I celebrate National Throw a Short Person Day by literally tossing one of our short friends. We talk about it all year as a joke, but for the past few years, we've executed a pretty clean toss onto the couch. bed, etc. No hurting the shorty. What the fuck, you guys? What the fuck? I did not know by asking this question that I'd receive such creative responses. And also, why does shorty sound actually so pejorative? Like, no hurting the shorty. Hey, shorty. That is like, actually, I need to bring that insult back. Obviously, because all of my friends are shorter than me. Do I have any friends that are taller? Like any female friends that are taller than me? No. So yeah, I need to start using shorty more. Like, hey, shorty. Absolutely. As a tall person, I need to start using that more. Another excellent one from Lily, who's 26 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, who said, my brother has invented multiple holidays, a man after my own heart, but my favorite is Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving must be celebrated at a specific pizzeria in our hometown during the week before Thanksgiving. Does everyone have a specific pizzeria in their hometown? Because I do. And whenever I see someone from my hometown, I know I can bring it up and they're going to get it. We actually have two. One's more of like a sit down, one's more of a late night. I think that's important cultural canon, at least for United Statesians. Anyway, at the celebration, you complain about everything that went wrong in the past year and everything that annoys you. The intention behind the holiday is that you unload your burdens before the holiday season and can spend the holidays being grateful for what you do have. It's silly and we haven't celebrated for years, but it's still a pleasant memory. Bring it back. Bring it back. Oh, oh, oh. I'm really getting very conversational with you guys because that's what I do in real life. If I say something and it's a concert and it's a song lyric, I will be singing it. So thank you for being here for episode 11 of Revelatorium. Give this a like, subscribe on YouTube, support me on Patreon if you want to see more of this stuff. And I will see you all next time. Cather out.